Can minorities be guilty of cultural appropriation? I'm Dara Starr Tucker, and this is The Breakdown. Anytime I discuss expressions of cultural appropriation like white chicks wearing box braids, white musicians making money off of musical genres created by black artists, or Justin Bieber in a do-rag, I'll invariably get comments like,
"Well, what about Beyonce's straight hair?"
Or,
"Why don't you tell that to Darius Rucker?"
Or,
"You speak proper English."
While yes, obviously, when people exist in close proximity to each other, they're bound to have an influence on one another. It's inevitable. It's human nature. That's a process called acculturation. And on one level, there's nothing inherently wrong with it. This is not about making sure the carrots and peas don't touch. But what the whole idea of cultural appropriation seeks to address is what happens when there's an unequal power dynamic involved. So what does cultural appropriation mean exactly? Well, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, it refers to the practice of a majority group adopting the culture of a minority group in a way that's exploitative, disrespectful, or stereotypical. Cultural appropriation happens when someone from a majority culture receives financial or social benefits of any kind from adopting the customs of a minority culture. So, ostensibly, any performer that receives financial gain from taking on mannerisms, styles, expressions, and behaviors that are clearly rooted in art developed by a minority culture would be guilty of cultural appropriation. Even someone who isn't a performer would likely receive some social benefit as well. So, it's all appropriation, right? Well, yeah, kinda, but it doesn't always have to be detrimental to minorities, and I'll tell you why a little later.
Well, then why don't we label Beyonce's long, straight, honey blonde wig in the same way?
Well, aside from the fact that many of the examples that folks like to use in these cases of supposed reverse appropriation really have nothing to do with actual culture, the appropriation argument just doesn't apply here. See, when minorities are incentivized by the dominant culture to adopt certain mannerisms, customs, behaviors, or practices associated with that dominant culture to avoid being belittled, unfairly scrutinized, or denied opportunities, that's called assimilation, not appropriation. The Encyclopedia Britannica defines assimilation as a process where individuals or groups of differing ethnic heritage are absorbed into the dominant culture of a society. It's an extreme form of acculturation, and oftentimes it's forced upon minorities. When European forces colonized North and South America, Australia, Africa, and Asia, they often forced indigenous people into religious conversions, they forced them to speak only English, and they were often forbidden from continuing their own cultural practices. This forced assimilation has had far-reaching impacts and is still with us today in so many ways. In one of my first jobs out of college, I was told that I couldn't wear my hair natural to work by a black-owned organization. They told me I'd have to straighten it or cover it up.
We don't allow our employees to wear naturals to work. We don't want to be known as the Black Power School.
And they literally did this when they said it. Yeah, this is a really clear example of the ways in which forced assimilation has never really left us. I'm pretty sure no white employee has ever been told that they'd lose their job unless they put their hair in cornrows. So appropriation and assimilation are two very different things. Appropriation is done to bring social or financial gain, whereas assimilation is often connected to survival. So, can you avoid cultural appropriation altogether? As hard as you may try, you're likely to fall into that trap one way or another, but here's what is possible. You can avoid being guilty of perpetuating the worst kinds of cultural appropriation, making light of a minority culture, treating their culture like a joke, using stereotypes, and failing to acknowledge where the art that you love and benefit from originates. You can make sure to shine a light on the origins of the styles you wear and the music that you love, and you can uplift and center minorities that are probably getting a lot less attention for embracing their culture than the majority counterparts are for appropriating it. I'll be doing 2 shows this fall, one at Dizzy's Jazz Club in New York City on the 11th of September, and the other at Blues Alley in DC on the 15th of October. I would love to meet you. Visit the link in my bio or in this video's description for tickets.